Good afternoon. My name is John Burgess, and I have the pleasure of being the chairman of the Little Rock Regional Chamber Board of Directors. Thank you for joining us today virtually. The mission of this Cultivate series is to fuel economic growth and facilitate the development of professional women by exploring obstacles and opportunities women encounter during their careers. The Little Rock Regional Chamber is excited to be able to provide a platform for amazing women to share their stories of inspiration, achievement, and success. Today's session is about investing in women-owned businesses. Although women entrepreneurs are confident in their business models and strategies, they do not always have equal access to capital. What can we do to encourage investments in women-owned startups, and what resources exist? Our esteemed panel of female leaders will discuss the entrepreneurial support community and how to cultivate the entrepreneurial ecosphere for women. But before we get started, I would like to take a moment to say thank you to our key business partners that help to make these discussions possible. These companies value professional development for women, and we are grateful for their support. Thank you to our swag bag sponsor, Dassault Falcon Jet. The first 35 lucky attendees who registered for this series received a branded swag bag filled with goodies provided by sponsors and women-owned organizations in our area. Thank you to our partner series sponsors, First Security Bank and Sam's Club. And last, but certainly not least, we want to thank PDC Companies for being the presenting sponsor. PDC Companies is a 100% women-owned development, real estate, and property management company. PDC recognizes the value of women in the workplace and events like this that bring them together, even virtually. Thank you, PDC Companies. In a moment, we will hear from our panel. But now I'd like to welcome to the stage Amanda Ribel, President and CEO of PDC Companies.
Good afternoon. PDC Companies, as a 100% woman-owned business, has been the presenting sponsor for the Women's Business Luncheon since its inception and is thrilled to be the presenting sponsor for the Cultivate series. Each year, I'm blown away by the talent the Chamber brings in to speak with us, and the knowledge I gain from each one of these programs is priceless. One of the best pieces of advice I received was to always have a goal, something to work toward. For those lofty goals, break them down into smaller, more obtainable pieces. And before you know it, the goals that seemed unobtainable last week, last month, or even last year will seem like a small stepping stone. Today's speakers are doing their duty of passing it on. Always try to remember who helped you along the way and do the same for others. Now it's my honor to introduce our moderator and panelist for today's panel, Erin Stranger. Is the Deputy Director of the Arkansas Regional Innovation Hub, a nonprofit organization that uses tools, skills, and expertise to inspire innovators and entrepreneurs who expand the range of educational and economic opportunities for themselves, for their communities, in our state, and throughout the world. Erin has a graduate degree in biology and urban studies and over 20 years of experience in fundraising, public relations, urban planning, community development, event coordination, educational programming, and membership development. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Erin Stranger.
Thank you so much, Amanda. It's so wonderful to be here today with all of you to help guide us through this incredibly important conversation. Whether you're a small business owner, you have had thoughts about owning your own business, or work for an established company, we're here to discuss valuable resources and lessons learned and how to grow and start your business through the lens of our diverse panel and their real-life experiences. So before I introduce our panelists, I want to first ask our Delta Dental poll question as we kick off today. And so this is for our viewers that are watching, so thank you for all of those that are attending virtually with us. So please answer this first question, is how many of you in the audience have considered starting your own business? So while you're answering that question, I'd like to introduce our amazing panel. So Brandy McNair is the owner and designer of Bella Vita Jewelry. She began her business in 2008 at local art fairs, retail shows, and online. Now, 11 years later, how about that? Bella Vita can be found at over 200 stores throughout the United States and Canada, and of course in Little Rock at her retail shop. So please welcome to the stage Brandy McNair. Okay. So we're also going to welcome Marty North. She currently serves as Senior Vice President and Director of Community Development for Simmons Bank. Marty is responsible for developing systems, implementing policies and procedures, monitoring performance, training staff, fostering community development efforts within low wealth communities within the Community Reinvestment Act. Also, along with all that work in 2020, Marty launched her own business, System Critical, to further this work. So please join me in welcoming Marty North to the stage. So ladies, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. Just getting to know you through your bios and knowing you personally, I know how busy you are. So it's an honor that you would take an hour out of your day to spend with us and have this great conversation. So thank you both.
Thank you.
So now we're gonna get down to business, to discussion we're all here for. So we're gonna have our panel, of course, our panel guests answer questions that I've prepared, but we're also gonna answer questions from the audience. So definitely listeners and virtual attendees, just know you're invited to be a part of this conversation and consider yourself included in this process. So first we're going to talk about our support networks and kind of starting a business. So Brandy, when you think about how you started your business and the support network that existed back then, what does that look like today? And how has that support network changed?
It's definitely changed, but I started my path in jewelry making when I was very young. So I had a lot of encouragement from family members, which I still have today. But back when I started Bella Vita in 2008, I would say one of my biggest mentors was my boss at the time. I was working at Argenta Bead Company in North Little Rock. So she was super supportive, worked around my hours so that I could do shows and stuff to sell my jewelry. She, worked with us to give us a employee discount so that we could resell our jewelry designs at a good price and everything. So she was definitely one of my biggest cheerleaders. And then, and she still is today. But I think today, 12 years later, as the business has evolved, our biggest support system is our customer base, who's turned into friends and family to me. So I think that's very important to nurture those relationships as you make them over the years.
I 100% agree. Thanks for that good advice. So what advice would you give a young female entrepreneur? Like what would you advise them to do as they start to explore just starting a business? What would be some first steps you would advise them to take?
Definitely do your research in your market. Decide if it's going to be something that you would do as a brick and mortar store or business, or if it's something that's just going to be online, or if it's, do you want to do this full time, or do you want to do this as a side job to your full-time job? Definitely, those are probably the biggest things that I would advise. In the research part, make sure that not everyone else is doing the same thing. Jewelry making is very popular, but I've also been doing it since I was 10 years old, so I just feel like it's what I'm supposed to do. So I would just, do your research and make sure you're doing something and offering something unique.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Good advice for our listeners today. All right. So I also want to look at our poll question number 2. So this is our second poll question from Delta Dental. So where do you feel Little Rock could do better in helping women-owned businesses thrive? All right, so as that question is being answered, we're going to ask Marty some fun questions. So what do you think are the 3 key assets that all female entrepreneurs should seek as they head down the pathway of turning their dreams of starting a business into a reality?
Wow, so Brandy kind of stole part of my thunder actually to start with. So definitely doing the research, and you have to do a thorough research. Because oftentimes people have a wonderful idea, but who else is also involved in that space within your community? What's the market in which you're wanting to reach? Who are your competitors? The passion. You've got to really understand that this is a lot of work and it's not always profitable to begin with. So how do you balance the life-work balance? And how do you continue to provide for your lifestyle? Do you continue working while you launch your business? Those are very important. And then also understanding the financial cost. As a banker, oftentimes people will have wonderful ideas and they think the first place that they go to receive capital to start their business is they're going to go get a startup small business loan.
Yeah.
I wish it were that simple all of the time, but we may not be the appropriate first stop. Sometimes, and a lot of the times, businesses are started, depending upon the type, using your own personal capital. Sometimes it is getting a personal loan. Sometimes it's using your own credit cards. Sometimes it's home equity lines of credit, because depending upon the type of business, the type of finance that becomes available to you and is appropriate to you is going to vary along your business life cycle. So understanding the financial needs, making sure you've done your research about that industry, making sure that you really are committed to the amount of work, because it's probably going to take twice the amount of effort that you may have originally thought about in order to really launch it successfully and correctly.
That's a lot of good advice. So I know everybody's listening. Well, let's jump into access to capital. Let's get into the money, this part of this discussion. How has access to capital changed in Central Arkansas over the past 10 years, and why has that occurred? And then what do you think has caused that biggest shift and impact?
Well, prior to 2020, the simple answer would be fintech.
Sure.
So the online apps, your PayPal, your Cash App, and then angel investors. So, and GoFundMe and a variety of other platforms that now exist that did not exist previously, which can be a resource if properly deployed. It's part of that total financial mix of what is appropriate for the type of business that you're utilizing. Online banking, online lenders. So all of this has strengthened the opportunities to access capital, but it's really, really important to do your homework about each one of these to make sure that you're utilizing the financial resources that are best situated for you at a cost that you can afford and that is reasonable for you. Because there are a lot of really high payday lenders and others that exist in the marketplace. So the internet has exploded with a lot of options as well. So in addition to your traditional credit unions and banks, there's a whole universe of other financial resources that exist that did not exist previously. And Arkansas and Little Rock, we're connected with the rest of the world. We're global as well. Yeah. So if you can access the internet, you too can access all of these resources.
Yeah, online I think has changed our world, and I know Brandy can attest to that as well, especially in the banking arena, but really universally as you have access to so many things. So that really segues nicely into kind of the same question to Brandy, but with a little bit different flavor. I know when you think about access to capital and kind of where you started, I'd love for you to tell our audience, how did you start Bella Vita from the ground up, on your own? And, I think that's going to be important for people to really listen to your story, because I think many people are going to resonate, because oftentimes people are, as they start out, opening their own business, there's some fear. They don't feel like they have the wisdom to be able to do it. How should they get started? So tell us how you built it from the ground up.
Well, again, I was really fortunate that I was very interested in jewelry making from about age 10. So I worked in bead stores and made jewelry all through junior high and high school. And then I took a break for college. And then after college, I started, thinking about jewelry again. And I was like, yeah, I really enjoyed that. So that's how Bella Vita started. I was not very happy at a desk job in 2008. And I had a box of tools and some leftover beads from my earlier days. And so I was very fortunate that I learned a skill as a child. So, if you notice your kids excelling in some art form, it might be a good thing.
So your hobby led you into...
Totally, yeah. And then again, I was very encouraged and supported by grandparents and parents. But in 2008 was not the best time to start a business by any means, but I had lost my job that I didn't like. And so I got a job at the bead store, and then got a job waiting tables, which is something I had done since childhood also. So I was lucky I had 2 part-time jobs, and then everything, I would just do every art fair or craft fair or farmer's market and just reinvest back into my business. I had a place to start, like I had the box of tools and some of the materials, and then that's just how I started it.
Wow.
And then I worked, part-time jobs till about 2014, I think. When I opened the storefront is when I went full-time, self-employed.
So you didn't have to go and get a massive loan.
No.
Like Marty has mentioned, that access to capital. So you really just worked hard saved your money. And
I could have, I'm sure, and things would have been a lot differently, and maybe I would have seen like instant growth and instant success also, but that wasn't the risk that I wanted to take at the time. Like I was fine working my jobs while I figured out how this was gonna work and how it was all gonna play out.
Yeah. So I think that's great to hear and really good advice. I love how you mentioned if you have a child, who's interested in a certain pathway, the arts or creatives, it's worth paying attention to. Important to note, you said it a couple of times, you had a box of tools.
I did, yeah.
That
exactly.
was your access, you love that. So yeah. I think that's a great way to always find that people, when they are passionate about their work, they love what they do, it really shows. And you can see it in their business model and their business plan, and also who they surround themselves with. So, congratulations on not having debt. That's important, right, Marty?
Yes.
Yeah, it's very, very important. So we're going to look at our poll question and look at the results. And we're going to look at polls 1 and 2. So I apologize for skipping our first one. So we're going to go back. So our first question for poll number 1, as we go backwards a little bit, was. How many people have thought about starting your own business? And so out of our guests today, we have 17 that said yes and 10 that said no. So that's wonderful, pretty high percentage of people that have thought about it, which is exciting. And then our poll 2 results, let's see if we can have those up as well. We might have to wait for those. So we're going to keep going, and we're going to jump into talking a little bit about entrepreneurial support systems. And so this is for Brandy, but Marty, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. So who and what is your entrepreneurial support system, and what steps did you take to grow that area? I heard grandparents, I heard parents. But
definitely.
Can you expand on that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, definitely family has always been the most encouraging. My husband also, things would have been a lot different had we not had his income, his steady income to help us along the way also. But I've also utilized other resources in the community, like the SCORE office through the Small Business Administration. I used to go, when I first started the business, or within the first couple of years, I went and visited with them, tried to on a monthly basis, and that's a free resource. And most recently, the Arkansas Small Business Technology Development Center has been a huge help and resource. If I run into a question, I'm not really sure how to approach it. I have several people out there that I work with and that check in with me from time to time, and they've been a huge help this whole time. And then again, friends, family, customers, customers become, friends and family.
Sure.
And some of my biggest cheerleaders are people I've met within the last couple of years that I'm just like, why do you like me so much? But it's cool. I mean, it's a neat feeling, and it goes a long way because it's neat.
Yeah, definitely. Marty, yeah. I saw you giggling over there as I did as well. That support system is really important as you start and also grow your business through the years. And as you mentioned, your support system may change, from depending on where you are on the stage of your business. But let's talk about that for you, Marty, especially as you started your own business in 2020.
Yes, so as Brandy had pointed out, if 2008 wasn't a good year to start a business, try starting a business during a global pandemic of 2020. But for me, it was ideal. because System Critical is a cultural competency company. So I provide a lot of cultural competency training to institutions and companies. And the reason why I started this is twofold. I have a big mouth. And I was serving on an economic development advisory group, and I was the only person that looked like me in the room, which is a familiar thing that I experience. And I was listening to all of these ideas, and to know me is to know I will speak up without hesitating. And I just said, none of what you just said is attractive to anyone that looks like me. And I got a lot of blank stares back at me, and I was like, because you don't understand the various cultures of individuals in your community. And that comment led the organizers to say, why don't you create a workshop around that? And so 6 years ago, I started down this space of providing these type of workshops. And I just decided during the pandemic to formally organize it. And the climate that we find our country in right now has made it very rich and ripe for these conversations to continue. And so it was the perfect time for me to start my company. So. Wow. That's what motivated me and how I got started.
So what kind of support system did you have around that process?
So I think mentors and your cheerleaders are very, very important. So some of my mentors, they don't know they were my mentors because I looked externally. I looked to see out in the global universe who was doing things in this space. I read a lot of books. My husband is a great support to me. My network, what I call in my inner circle of friends who are across the country, and we bounce all types of ideas, and they will give you unfiltered, honest truth. You got to have a really tough skin to take in some of it. And then just literally the feedback that I was getting every time that I was providing a workshop. So those customer feedback have made all the difference. So all of that coming together. And then I would say also my sorority sisters and everyone who is involved in supporting me. I have a really good base of individuals who cheer me on.
Yeah, that's really important. I know in one of the previous Cultivate panels, they talked about having your personal board.
Yes.
So it's the strong people that hold you up, whether they're men, women, family members. And I definitely can attest to that through my professional career, and then watching other successful women and men start their own businesses. So I think that constructive criticism is really important. And I've also found that not being in an echo chamber is also very important. If you're surrounding yourself with people that look like you and think like you may not be able to expand the way that you really need to or want to, especially for our society. So sounds like y'all are on the right track. I like it. So we're gonna see if we have some poll results up from number 2. So the question on this was how can we do better, and how can we provide more support? So we're seeing that we can build a more supportive ecosystem for women to survive. We can create more networking opportunities, advising cooperative opportunities, having more information about grants or funding opportunities, more forums like today, which I think is great. And so just being aware of resources as well, which I think is really important for everyone that's starting a business, as Brandy mentioned several, so I noticed. Also offering opportunities to promote and showcase our products. Another really good one. Our audience is good today. I love it. Education on zoning and supporting different varieties of home businesses. And last but not least, providing financing, education, and mentoring opportunities. Wow, did any of those stand out to y'all as we looked at that wonderful list of how we can do better? Just curious.
Several of them did about available resources. Brandy hit on 2 that I wish more individuals were aware of. SCORE, an amazing
Let's just talk about that
resource.
What if people listening today know nothing about SCORE? Can you tell them a little bit about services they provide?
So,
or either one of you.
Sure. So SCORE is a retired professionals. And so you have a group of individuals who have successfully run a variety of types of businesses, and they serve as mentors to startups and emerging businesses to help them navigate through how do they handle certain situations, what is a possible solution for handling a scenario they're unsure of, but to have that experience to help you. And did I say it was free? It's a free resource. And it's a great resource, and it's available, widely available. And then she mentioned the Small Business Technology Development Center. Wonderful resources, great team of individuals that can help you work through your business plan, are actually putting together financing if you decided to pursue like an SBA type of startup capital and early capital investments. They help you put those applications together, and a lot of their services are free as well. So, and their trainings and educational forums are low cost. Great resources that we have here in our community that maybe we all collectively could do a little bit more to help promote and elevate and make people aware that these those two in particular exist.
I agree. Anything to add to that list right now on the top of your brain?
No, I mean, those are the two that I've utilized the most.
Sure.
But
Well, I'll add one. So the Arkansas Women Business Center, so that's Chauncey Pettis and her team. So they're really there to support entrepreneurs. Of course, their focus is on female entrepreneurs, but they provide all the type of support that you've heard these two women talk about today. So that's just another one to add to the list. So
Absolutely.
there are a lot of great resources. So we have our last Delta Dental polling question today, which I love this one. How do you measure success as a business owner? So we'll see how people respond to that. So we're going to turn to kind of moving forward and measuring success with our questions. And so, Marty, I'm going to start with you. What do you think is needed in Central Arkansas to see the necessary changes that we need to see and experience for female entrepreneurs? Many of the things that our audience listed, resonated. And so what's going to be what are those necessary changes? Maybe it is being able to see those resources quickly, right? So.
Yes, so I've adapted my answer looking at the poll responses, and I think the first step is increasing awareness. So individuals are aware of the resources available, and I think there's a variety of ways in which that can be done. Also, providing the support network among people aspiring to start their business or possibly early startups. From a financial perspective, I think financial coaching, which is a little different than financial literacy, really should be elevated and possibly strengthened, whether it's going to any of the resource providers or strengthening your network to include other subject matter experts. But the financial coaching is key. I encounter a lot of people with brilliant ideas and talent, but they don't know the business side of it. And so when they go to structure their business, you don't know what you don't know. And if you're trying to figure out what do I need to do, you may miss some important steps, and you may actually set up your business incorrectly, and then it becomes an issue of trying to revamp it and start over or make some serious shifts. So I think the opportunity to first, to strengthen the ecosystem for financial coaching, that one-on-one. Here are some basics, but even SBTDC has a how to start a business in Arkansas. So elevating those resources, better connecting and identifying some of those startup organizations. And I don't want to give any organizations an additional task, but I think what the Little Rock Chamber is doing through the Cultivate series is one amazing step, and that can be built on and expanded to provide additional outlets for women as well.
That's all really, really great advice. What do you think, Brandy?
I think just having conversations with people that have started successful businesses and people that have failed in business, that I think that would be really important. I don't really know of anyone doing that here in Central Arkansas, just telling them, kind of being a mentor and telling people your story and your background and this is what's worked. And then also talking to people that haven't been as successful, because I think it's important to hear both sides of the stories, because I think there's something to learn from everybody's story, so.
Amen.
Yeah, I agree. That success is a wonderful thing to talk about, but I do think I think my team at the Innovation Hub would probably tell you that we also learn from our failures, and it leads to that success. And so, and I think everyone that I know that has started a business and had successful careers, there's just been these failures along the way that have really led to their success. And I think it is important to stop and just talk about, what you learned from those moments, in your career. But I do think one quality you need to have is a little bit of vulnerability to have that conversation. As you mentioned, it's not something that we touch on very often, maybe in the entrepreneurial realm. Some do and some don't. So I should say we as in maybe the circle that I visit with. But I do think it's a really important thing to talk about. And so we may create some more Cultivate opportunities, maybe some ideas for future sessions. So, but definitely failure can lead to a lot of really good learning opportunities. So when you think about what is needed in Central Arkansas, how are we doing in Little Rock versus the rest of the nation? So I'll kind of point to Marty for this as you think about where we are right now as a community and maybe where we need to be.
So I really struggled with this question. I have the good fortune of having a 6-state territory. So I have urban, suburban, mega cities as well. And I had an interesting conversation with a group out of Dallas last week. And as he was describing some of their capital issues, some of the financing challenges and development opportunities, it sounded just like Little Rock. And I was really stunned because, Dallas is considerably larger than us, but to listen the way he described some of the challenges and opportunities, I just kept finding myself going, oh, well, that's like Southwest Little Rock, or oh, that's like North Little Rock, or oh, that's just like this area of town I went. So sometimes I think we get caught up in being part of Arkansas and that we're so different than the rest of the country when we really aren't. Our size doesn't really impact the level of need and opportunity that exists. I think sometimes we limit our own potential ourselves, whereas we have the exact same opportunities to grow and design and innovate as any other place. It may be a little harder and trickier to get here, but what we've learned during this pandemic is that technological advances expanded at a rate within the first 6 months of this pandemic at the rate of 5 years of advances. So we are becoming more globally connected. We're understanding how to connect with customers in a broader area, how to render our services differently. And so I really don't think we're that different. We may have a population adjustments and a couple of nuances, but structurally, I think we have some of the same organizations, maybe on a smaller scale than a larger community, but we can always build upon them and improve.
Great answer. So, and just Brandy, for you, a little change in maybe the question, but when you just hone in, when you think about the jewelry business, kind of what changes have you seen in that? She mentioned the pandemic and the technology. What have you done in this last year that's really impacted your business?
Taking things more virtually than just having a website, and making sure that our website is very up to date, because we shut down the store for 2 months. So when that's the only thing that you have to bring in income, that's got to be your number one focus. So stepping up social media, making sure our website was up to date, were probably the two biggest things that helped us out in the beginning of COVID.
Yeah. And so looking forward, past COVID, I know everybody's looking forward to getting back in person after we're all vaccinated. I know, and shopping, becomes something that we can do in person. So do you think as we continue on, of course, in all our entrepreneurial activities that, continuing that strong website and online focus is going to be key to your business?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I should have done it a long time ago. But I'm a big in-person, I really like in-person communication. And so I want people to come into the store, but when you don't have that, you have to rely on the internet, which the internet's, it's a pretty amazing place, you know. You can find anything out there.
Definitely.
It's very interesting, yeah.
Definitely. And Marty, thinking about your business, so that you just started, like you mentioned, you said during a pandemic. What other, states have that? Are you the first one that has created? I know in Arkansas, but did you look to other states to get advice, or you just said, I'm just doing this because it's needed?
I basically said I'm doing this because it's needed. I was really, and I continue to be really concerned about some of the conversations. And I'm pretty transparent. And so if you ask me a question, I try to answer it really from an authentic space. And I found out that people really connect with that. And I just felt on the power of the networks that I've established from my nonprofit work, from my church, and from my banking work for the last several years. We won't go into how many years, but a lot of years, that I had a network that I could reach into and ask them, were they also sharing some of these concerns? And before I knew it, I was getting referrals to come in. Can you help us think through how do we have some of these tough, uncomfortable conversations? How do we help our staff navigate? And how do we look at the diversity within our organizations? And how do we change that? Maybe I hadn't been as aware of things until more recently. And so it's just provided just an amazing opportunity for me. So I'm a student of everything. So I'm forever gobbling up as much information and reading and studying and asking people and bouncing ideas off of individuals as well. So
Sounds like a successful entrepreneur to me, just like both of you women are. So we're going to take a minute to look at our answers to our third poll question. And so let's look here. So how do you measure success? Our first answer is stress level. I understand that. Sustained growth, client base, word of mouth, reputation, referrals, measuring success by achieving your goals. When it runs successfully without you. We're going to come back to that one for sure. Measuring happiness and satisfaction, getting personally that you get from work, and how well I'm serving others, and of course, profit and growth. Waking up and being joyful in what you do with your work. It's very important to success, even if the profits are not showing it yet. Feeling comfortable that the work I'm doing is beneficial for others, but also can be financially stable. Those are great ways to measure success. I'm a little surprised by some of those answers. I loved all of them. So one that I immediately thought, let's come back to that is secession and like writing things down and knowing that even if you're not there, I know any of my Innovation Hub team that is listening right now, they're like, yeah, Erin's talking about secession. It's important to write down your things and know that if you are not there, that someone could step right in and fulfill those goals and responsibilities that maybe even have for the day or the month or the year. But many of those spoke to me. How about y'all? What resonated with you in those answers? Could you relate to any of those measurements of success?
I like the waking up and feeling joy. That's huge.
It's huge.
Because it's a lot of work. When you mentioned passion, you have to be passionate about what you're doing to be a business owner.
absolutely. For me, it's important that I feel like I'm making a difference. So profit is important, but I also want to make sure that I am making a difference, and that gives me a certain sense of satisfaction when I see the light bulb go off in someone, or they come up to me afterwards and say, oh my goodness, I never thought of it in that way, or you shared something with me that I was totally unaware of impacts other individuals in a certain way. I consider that to be a success every time one of those occurrences happens. So that resonated with me.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I've I've really heard from a lot of women, especially in the pandemic times, on how important it is to love what you do and to be joyful. My husband and I talk about this often, especially for women. It seems that it really does correlate. If you're happy and you're joyful in your work, and I'm not leaving men out of this discussion, but I have found in talking to other women friends that waking up and really enjoying what you do and being very passionate, it does correlate to your success in the day and how you treat others and talk about your business. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's not easy being a girl, first of all. We wear so many different hats, and if you're a wife and a mother and you are a business owner and you have all these different responsibilities and people looking to you, so it's important that you can find joy in what you are doing in order to sustain you through those rough, bumpy moments as well, so you can lean into and be reminded of your why. Because I think your why you're doing something is equally as important, whether it's driven by a God-given talent, a heartfelt desire, or whatever other thing really drives you to start your business. It's also got to sustain you through those bumpy moments. So yeah, finding the joy and locking down on it is really important.
Brandy, you mentioned you weren't happy at that desk job, and eventually you were let go.
It was not for me. Yeah.
Birthed Bella Vita, more Bella Vita, so I can say I'm excited about that, I guess. But it seemed to resonate with you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. All right, so we're getting towards the last part of our time together here, but we have saved some time at the end for the audience to ask us some questions. Of course, all this is sponsored by Delta Dental. And so I'm going to read through some of our questions right now and see which of our panelists would like to answer. So based on your experience, do you think women face unique challenges when it comes to starting up a business as compared to men? And if so, what are those differences? That's a big question.
Alicia.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So yes, I believe women face unique challenges, and I think it's because we are women, and a lot of us are female-headed households. And so once you are a female-headed household and you have children possibly, how you're going to frame starting a business is going to look a little different. Oftentimes, I've been to so many women's conferences over the year, and that hesitancy to launch is a major thing, the hesitancy to launch, whereas we find men typically are more courageous to just jump out there and do it and are less afraid of potentially stumbling along the way. There was a study recently that even showed when pursuing a job, that women will go through the job description and feel like they need to meet 100% of the qualifiers. And men will look at it and I got 60% of it, I'm applying for it.
Yeah.
And they're just gonna launch for it. And so I think sometimes depending upon our support system, what we've seen and how comfortable we are in our own voice, impacts our ability, and it makes it very, very unique. And then depending upon whether or not we have a financial base or additional support also impacts our ability and when we launch and how we launch.
Yeah. Very, very good answer. Do you have anything you want to add, Brandy, before we move on?
No, I would agree. Women wear a lot of hats. So
We do. We do. All right. So even when your business is established, what kind of continued education, this is great, do you feel is important? You know, there's a lot of continued education hours that several different professions require. Let's say we'll jump into for example, nurses. There's hours that you have to complete each year as you renew your license. So when you think about establishing your business, what is some continued education that you need to succeed? Boy, Brandy, you both have a great answer here, but 12 years in to growing your business, what do you think you're continually looking at?
Well, I think there's a lot of resources in the community, Chamber, Small Business Technology Center, SCORE, that do webinars and online events and stuff, or in-person events when times are normal. But I think also it's really important just as important as education is that important to be in your community and network with other fellow business owners and, just people in your community, and make sure you're doing something to give back. Because there's always something to learn from volunteering your time on a board or taking homeless people meals, in your community. Like, I think it's really important to show up for that as well.
That's great advice. Anything you'd like to add, Marty?
I believe you have to become the subject matter expert in whatever endeavor you have decided to launch. So that means you have got to be a forever student in order to stay the subject matter expert, whether the field or business requires ongoing official certifications. You don't learn something one and done. You need to constantly be exploring trade magazines, trade organizations, membership organizations that you could become a member of, looking into your community to see what type of webinars, books that are available, but connecting and constantly seeking information and being a consumer of it. I think that's so important for you to continue to be relevant and for you to operate at the highest level in your field.
100% agree with both of you, and I'll add, I've always found it's important to just in continuing education, but surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you, because even as you grow as a business, you may come across something that you don't know how to do. It's the next step you need to take. Like, I really need to make my website fantastic, or I need to build an online store. How do I do that? So I think it's important to seek others that are smarter than you and jump in and ask for that kind of help. So, all right, our next question. Goodness, it's for me. So compared to other parts of the country, how would you rate the entrepreneurial startup ecosystem in Little Rock? So I appreciate that question. I'm excited to say in the last few years, I have really seen tremendous growth. And I think it is because of the support networks that we've mentioned today in our conversations, but it's also just having these vulnerable conversations and really diving into maybe new areas of business. And I do think Little Rock has expanded overall just as a city with how we're going to grow our business, the things we're going to look at to focus on, different areas of business. Even if you look at what did downtown Little Rock look like 10 years ago versus what it looks like today, and especially with the Chamber's help, it's been an amazing growth process to watch. So I think we're continuing to improve, each year in our entrepreneurial system. So I'm going to check our time here. We've got just a little bit of time left to answer a couple of more questions. So our next question is, what are some of the characteristics that we should look for when choosing our banking partners for our businesses? Marty.
Oh my goodness. Temptation for an infomercial or a sales pitch right here for one bank in particular. But okay, I'll resist the temptation to say, first of all, look to see what products and services they have available that align with your needs. Also, look to that institution to see what they value and what types of things they invest in the community as well. See how visible and accessible they are in a community, and does it align with what you value? Once again, you can't get over the products and services and obviously the return and the cost of borrowing money, but really looking at the total picture of an institution and how they can help you achieve your financial goals.
So I've had this question asked to me before about the banking industry, and this was a young entrepreneur. She even asked me, who do I talk to at the bank? She's like, I've dealt with the teller, and I've dealt with someone opening my bank account. So even when you look, it's kind of a very simple question, but even as you're looking at a bank, who do you go to talk to about these things?
So banking continues to evolve like the rest of the economy and the world. So even when you enter into a retail branch, brick and mortar location, tellers aren't tellers anymore, and branch managers aren't just branch managers anymore. So depending upon the type of request, they are becoming more and more sophisticated to where they can handle it. And if they cannot, you have systems now and partnerships So if a certain type of commercial request comes into a retail branch, they have a commercial lending partner, so in which they can hand off and work with together to help figure out what is the best approach into helping service your need, or if it's trying to buy a home or finance a car or a variety of other things. So the team approach exists and is continuing to strengthen. The retail branch is typically the easiest way, but it doesn't hurt to go out on the internet or even pick up the phone. I know that is an odd thing nowadays, to pick up a phone, look up a number, and just call and say, hey, I'm looking to talk to someone who specializes in this particular thing. And believe it or not, call centers will direct you to individuals who can help you.
It still works.
It still works. Call centers still work.
So, Brandy, just a curious question for you. Have you stayed with the same bank throughout your process?
Yeah.
Loyalty.
I actually have, yeah.
Yeah, that's neat. That's neat. I was just curious about that. So I think we have time for a couple more. How can large and established companies support and foster women business owners? And Brandy, I may start with you on this one, if you don't mind, because I know you, of course, you're Bella Vita. I don't consider you small because you've grown so much through the years. But how do you foster other women business owners? How can you do that and support?
For me personally, it's really important. When I'm sourcing goods for my store, I try to source from, when I'm at trade shows, I try to source from other female entrepreneurs and then local artists and then fair trade companies. So I try to hit those three criteria first before I order from other people. But I think for other bigger businesses to support people like Bella Vita or someone similar, you know, we work with we wholesale our jewelry, so we work with a lot of big companies as well. And most recently, we did some charm bracelets for a local nonprofit. I mean, they could have gone to anyone, you know, but they chose to keep their product local, and they got such a neat end product that was so unique to their brand. So, like, you might not think of a smaller company like Bella Vita to be someone to make something as like a thank you gift to your donors or something to raise money for your charity. But a lot of local businesses would love to, or a lot of small female-owned businesses would love to help and can, you know, take on projects like that. So
that's a great.
I think thinking outside the box a little bit would be one place to start.
Yeah, that's a great answer. How about you, Marty? Anything come to mind?
Google search.
Google search.
So
important.
If you are a larger company and you're wanting to see who else is in that space, Google may be, and not really trying to brand Google or whatever, Bing or whatever search engine you like, to be able to see who else is in your sphere, geography-wise or whatever, to see who else is engaged in this space and see who's involved. And I promise you, if you went ahead and reached out to one of those smaller businesses, they would be so thankful, so appreciative to hear from someone finding them and wanting to help them be successful. I do this a lot in my particular area in banking for people who work in my specialized area from all over the country. And now I have 4 different individuals I'm mentoring at banks that are smaller than ours to help them understand how to navigate particularly this regulatory time. And so you become a rock star, to be honest with you, when you do something like that. So I say search engine and try to find some of those smaller businesses that you may not know exist, because there are some great talent out there who is looking for mentors and additional support.
Yeah. So rock stars. That's what we need to do, ladies. Doesn't surprise me. Both of you are probably are mentors for several women, whether you know it or not. So remember that. So unfortunately, we are coming to a close today, but please join me in thanking our wonderful, incredible women that were here today. And just thank you for sharing your experiences. And again, just giving us an hour of your time. I thoroughly enjoyed hearing your answers and getting to know you, and I know that our guests did as well. And I also want to thank the Chamber again for creating Cultivate, and thank you for allowing me to lead and guide this discussion today. So if you join me in welcoming back to the stage, John Burgess, our chairman of the Little Rock Regional Chamber Board.
On behalf of the Chamber, I would like to thank all of you for being part of today's conversation. I hope you've been inspired and challenged. Special thanks to Aaron, Marty, and Brandy for sharing their time and experiences with us. We hope you all will join us in 2021 as we continue our Cultivate Women's Business series. Our next session will focus on 4 core pillars: leadership, education, health, and entrepreneurship. We will culminate this series with our Women's Business Luncheon, celebrating women who embody these 4 core pillars. To register and learn more details on how you or your organization can be involved with these powerful discussions, make sure you head to www.littlerockchamber.com. Thank you again to all our sponsors for making today's event a reality. Thanks to all of you who joined us virtually, and we hope you have a great rest of the week.